Dave Meltzer came out with a report. Dave Meltzer is such an insider to the world of professional wrestling. And he came out with a report, and it was very simple. And he just said that Tito Ortiz is spending time at the WWE training center, training to be a pro wrestler. And there seems to be a lot of that going around right now, which I'm very interested in what the WWE's play is here. I wouldn't even put it past spite because a couple of theirs guys came over to the UFC. I would not put it beyond spite. But that wouldn't really be something that would be applicable to Tito. I mean, Tito's not being used, right? There's not a lot of guys that are doing business with Tito right now and seeking Tito out. And by the way, this is not a typical Chael burying Tito session. That's not what this is. I just do look at that, and Dave Meltzer, when he came out and he talked about Tito and Tito's participation and his involvement there, he then complimented Tito. And he said, look, I haven't seen it, I wasn't there, but from what I'm hearing, the guys like him, and he's putting his time in. He's humbled himself, he's showing up on time, he's working hard, he's not trying to get out of there early, he's kind of immersed in himself and learning professional wrestling. I would just be curious what the play is. The WWE was very strong in their talks with me. They were very strong and they were very bullish. They had one reservation. They did not love my age. At that time, I was 33 years old. If I'm wrong, I was 31 years old. But for them, they were very clear to say, look, we like a guy who's closer to 19 to 21. It's going to take a couple of years to get him television ready. It's going to take a number of years to teach him the psychology, but then we've still got a shelf life of a decade to a decade and a half. You being on the north side of 30 is the only thing that's stopping some of these numbers. They're very open about that. And when you look at whether it was Ronda going over or Cain Velasquez, who's doing a great job, or now I guess we're hearing that Tito's spending some time over there, Travis Brown's spending some time over there. I am just curious, what do they plan to do? And I have a bigger question, which is some of Tito's downfalls in MMA. Some of the things that people tease him. I'm guilty. I'm one of those people that tease him. That give Tito a hard time about. Could those actually be strengths in professional wrestling? I mean, Tito for sure has charisma. Tito for sure has a look. He for sure shows up in shape. Tito checks a couple of boxes. He is for sure a recognizable face. There are things that we could hand to Tito. Now, Tito's not a thinker. Don't ask him to do any thinking. If you ask him live, hey, Tito, what's 2 times 2? There's a chance that he responds potato. But if you hand him a script in the WWE, you tell him what the inflection is going to be. You tell him specifically, here's what this gentleman is going to say, and then you just say this, and you limit it. Don't expect him to retain a whole script, but if you were to limit a segment, I think he could pull it off. I really do. I think he could pull it off to some degree. What's his angle? Who's he going to team up with? Who's he going to go against? I don't know. Is it going to be quick run-ins? Is it an enforcer type? Is it a manager role? To picture Tito, I don't know what Tito is, but I believe he's 44 years old and going on 45. To picture that he is going to go and go through all of the training, which is going to take a period of time. Even if all of the reports that Dave Meltzer put out, and they were very glowing reports, in fairness. Dave had very nice things to say about Tito and Tito's interest in learning how to do this. Even if he does that at an expedited rate, you're talking 8 or 9 months. So if I'm telling you I think Tito's 44, but almost 45, he for sure is 45 before he ever walks a ramp, before he ever sees TV. Okay, that's not terrible. He looks a lot younger than he can get away with being 45. He's one of those guys. He looks 35. He can get away with that on TV. As far as the interviews go, yeah, they're going to have to work with him. They're going to have to limit it. What capacity are you going to use Tito? I think all of these things are very fair questions. To make believe that he's going to take on a full schedule? No, I don't think so. He's also not going to be caught up in 8 months or even a year with where Cain Velasquez is right now. Totally different work ethics, totally different level of athlete, totally different attitudes. And even Cain, they found a way to work him in that was very meaningful, but they limited his time. One thing that Tito Ortiz can do is he can make an entrance. If you ever see a Tito event live and you watch Tito's walkout, you buy it. You buy, this guy's a badass. I mean, he looks the part. He's got the crazy eyes. He puts the face on. He walks in. He's staring at you. He's huffing and puffing. He does his job. He sells you on the idea that, okay, I got a legitimate guy in front of me. And that's largely what pro wrestling is. So I can see where Tito could fit into a lot of these spots. But I would ask, are some of the things that he gets teased about in the world of fighting, but all of those things come down to one thing, which is him having to do any level of thinking. His mind processes a little bit differently, and by the time it comes out of his mouth, it comes out a little bit wrong, and he bumbles. And I'm really not looking to kick Tito in this fact. We're well known. Tito will tell you that. Tito will tell you, sometimes I have a hard time speaking. Let me slow down. Let me be a little bit calmer. Let me rephrase that thought. So if you had somebody that was helping a charismatic, athletic, legitimate tough guy, legit shooter, with the script, I'm asking a question. I'm not answering it. We're all going to have to sit back and see, but would that help him? Would some of his deficits in MMA actually be made up for and help to get him over in pro wrestling? I'll share one final personal story with you. Tito did a wrestling event. What was it called? Was there a wrestling organization called TNA at one point? Was it TNT, TNA? Maybe it was TNA and it was hosted on TNT. The point is, whatever the initials were, there was a pay-per-view. And the pay-per-view was going to feature Tito Ortiz. It was only like $10. It was a very cheap pay-per-view. I bought that pay-per-view just to see Tito. I mean, that's how much Tito does have a presence on screen. And this was a meaningful amount of time ago. I remember the home that I lived in. I left that home a number of years ago. So this was right around 2006, 2007. A meaningful amount of time ago, but Tito did something. He didn't have a match. I thought I was promised a match. He didn't have a match. But he did do like an enforcer type role backstage. And it was very limited in talking. It was more like the cutoff shirt, show off the arms, come in there with the great big HGH head and stare somebody in the eye. But he pulled it off. It was worth my 2 hours. It was worth my $9.99. In all fairness to Tito, I could see him with the proper booking. I could see him earning my time. I'll speak for myself. I would stop what I was doing. I would watch. And I will tell Tito, on this regard, and possibly in this regard only, I wish you luck.